obviously tracking Nate and its impact. Obviously, the eastern side of the storm is going to feel different effects. We're in New Orleans, and we're anticipating what the storm's going to bring. The sewage and water board's been the main issues, especially since August 5th.
Yeah, absolutely. It certainly has, and everybody's got a close eye on how operations are functioning there, whether or not the pumps are ready to handle the task, whether or not they've got enough staff, all of those things. So I think we're going to get some answers on that pretty shortly here.
What have you seen and heard from the city over the last, 48 hours as the city is prepared for Nate?
I think they, are taking a lot of precautions to make sure that everything is, as functioning as it can be. I think they have a long way to go in terms of getting the system back to where they want it to be. And what's interesting about that is, we heard the mayor saying that nobody rang the bell as of August 5th, when we had the situation with, the pumps not necessarily working, some of them down for maintenance, some of them broken, problems with power, all of those things that we've been hearing about a lot over the last couple of months. And, the question is, how did it get to this point? And that's why we're doing sort of an in-depth investigation.
And we can pose some of those questions to Paul Rainwater with the Sewage and Water Board right now. He joins us by phone. And Mr. Rainwater, what are you seeing now in terms of the capacity? Obviously, we're not taking on a good amount of rain here in the city of New Orleans, but what is your assessment of the pumping and the drainage system right now, especially considering this storm?
So, we started several days ago, kind of working through, different scenarios based on the modeling that, we'd anticipated. What we thought would be 4 to 6 inches of rain. We've been very fortunate, with the small. I think we've had less than an inch in some places, which has, been great for the system. But I mean, right now we still, turbines 1, 3, and 6 are operational right now. And we are using Entergy commercial power, and we've got some additional, power through frequency changers stations, which we've been using. And we've also have 26 generators that we had rented for, hurricane season to help us get through these events. We put a lot of, when we talk about it a lot, but, one of the things that we're improving out here is just the ability for the power station to communicate with the pump operators and making sure that, we now have 3 different ways for them to communicate, which, before the folks at Central Control, there's a gentleman named Eric Labat who does a good job of, producing power for pumps and water with the, the antiquated system that we have here. It's very manually driven. That, we've put monitors in the Central Control that now they can see what's happening at the different pump stations. And we have a number of support personnel now that help and assist in, communicating what's happening. So, but, just to give you an example, right now we're running 6 pumps on 25 cycle power and 15 pumps on 60 cycle power. And I can go through a list of, pump stations that are running and the pumps that are running at those pump stations. And we're getting, updates about every 15 to 30 minutes about the, the level and what's happening. And, we dispatched, there are going to be things that are going to happen. We've, dispatched mechanics out to several pump stations and fixed problems before they became, an issue. So,
what, can you expound on that a little bit? What types of problems have you all seen?
Well, I mean, we had a, mechanical issue out at pump station 12. We were able to, pump station 12 is running. We had, things are going to happen with old machinery, right? You got, we lost water pressure momentarily today at 3:30, but we were able to get it back up within 15 minutes, by some quick action by our folks, and it avoided a water advisory. So, those things are going to happen when you're, putting a load on the system, that, and again, as we've said, it's very manually oriented. We're going to be providing the mayor in the middle of this month some options about where the city needs to go. It's one of the things he's asked us to do. And, of course, we have to get through this event, which I have to say that, people have worked very hard and we're very prepared for it. And we built some redundancy in, with additional generators, additional pumps, like, for example, out at pump station 7, we were down, a large pump. We put some temporary pumps out there to help lower the canal so that we could position ourselves. And so those are the kinds of things that, people are doing out here that I think is going to help into the future. But also the city needs to decide where it wants to go with the system, and then we're going to provide that to the mayor in the near future with about 5 options looking at the future. So.
What exactly happened with that loss of water pressure? Was it a problem with the power plant like we've seen in the past?
So it was, we were bringing turbine 6 up. It was a low voltage issue and basically tripped a breaker. But again, we were able to, they had war gained, and we went through, and before we start all the turbines, we went through and talked about what your alternatives were, right? Because we want to, prevent, water advisories in the future, and we want to prevent, issues related to the pumps. And so we went through kind of that scenario so people were prepared to react, and they did exactly that.
So turbine 6 is running. I'm sorry to cut you off.
Yes, ma'am, it is.
Mr. Rainwater, you mentioned that you were going to present some options for the city. If you were to talk to the mayor today, top 3 options that would get the Sewage and Water Board and the pumping and drainage system back up and running to where it needs to be, what would you tell them? Top 3.
Well, I mean, we're not there yet, and I tend to be, the reason I'm here, I think, is because I focus on the wolf closest to the door, and right now that's the storm, and and then creating a stable base of power. Remember, we've got, we're in the process of loading 5 electromotive diesel generators. There's a very large generators which will provide this city, some additional power, and then we have a plan to bring turbine 5 up, which will provide hopefully by November, the middle of November up. And so, that'll be 4 turbines. That'll be 5 very large generators. And so once we provide that stable base, then we'll be discussing, some additional options and continuing to work through that exercise. But before I leave, like I said, in the middle of October, we're going to provide the mayor with, some options looking at, how you invest, and bringing in some experts from around the country to look at that as well. And then, but right now what we're focused on is this event, and then, getting those EMDs in place, and then fixing turbine 5.
Well, and that's understandable getting through this event, but I mean, as early as, just Monday, we saw flooding in the city. So once we do get through this event, what are the top things, maybe asking the question a different way, I mean, what are you focusing then on Monday and Tuesday? I mean, what comes after getting through this event? Well,
I mean, we're gonna continue working on, put in our plan to get turbine 5 up, and then we're gonna, start focusing on, or refocusing on those EMDs, the 5 EMDs that are out here right now. We're laying some concrete slabs to make sure they're stable so that they can survive, any event that may occur. And what I'm trying to do, and what the mayor tasked us to do, is not only get through this hurricane city, but set the city up for, next hurricane season as well. So we're also looking at standard operating procedures at some of the pump stations that were very old. No fault of the pump operators, the pump supervisors. They were doing what they were told. And so, what we're going through is, trying to create a culture. And, like you didn't have pump operators that have email addresses, for example. And so those people have been identified. They need to be able to be communicated to as part of an organization. And so we're working on that as well.
Can you talk a little bit about those EMDs? Those are those big generators that you guys are installing over at the power plant. Whenever we had the boil water advisory a few weeks ago and the loss of turbine 6, you said that those EMDs would be ready to go October 2nd. What's been the delay? Is it those concrete slabs that you just mentioned?
So the 2 things. One about the boil water advisory, the 2 large, the $50 million towers that are being built, called the Hammer Project, will help prevent water advisories in the past. The EMDs, we made the decision to go ahead and create a stable base for the EMDs, and that's why the project got pushed back a little bit, which made sense, and we had the time to do it with turbine 3 coming up, so we didn't feel as much pressure to do that. And so, it was a better decision to go ahead and, create a long-term solution. But the Hammer Project will provide about 45 minutes of time the next time, once it's completed next year, to provide that space that you need to, to convert power. So, I've got to get back to a meeting. So, I really appreciate it.
Paul Rainwater, thank you very much, sir, the interim
Thank
director
you.
of the Sewage and Water Board. Arguably the least that's probably the most thankless job right now in the city of New Orleans. But Katie Moore is joining us, and Katie, you've been investigating along with the investigative team. We tried to ask Mr. Rainwater this question. What do you think the Sewage and Water Board needs to do to kind of retool itself? I mean, obviously he's kind of hamstrung in terms of what he can present, but in what you've seen, what does the Sewage and Water Board need to do to turn things around?
Well, I mean, I think he hinted at it. He said some of the pump station operators didn't even have email accounts. Yeah. So just think about that for a second. You know, this is an
a
organization.
lot of modernizing to do.
Absolutely. I mean, not just modernizing, but that's like taking you out of almost the Stone Age at this point.
Right, at every level.
Every level. And, you know, some of the other things that he mentioned just now, he's talking about antiquated old equipment. And he's saying, well, antiquated old equipment is going to go down, which is true.
Yeah.
And so how long have we had that antiquated old equipment? And I think there are a lot of questions about what our level of preparedness has been leading up to this point. And I wonder what the knowledge of certain people has been about that level of preparedness. And I think moving forward, you know, that modernization needs to happen, you know, overnight.
Right.
You know,
I mean, he's talking about getting something online in November, which here on October 7th sounds like a far way away.
Yeah, absolutely. And, you know, hearing that there are delays in getting those EMDs installed, that power plant has really been, and decisions about how to power the system has been key to some of the problems that they've been having, you know, that they had on August 5th, that they had on July 22nd, that they had last week. And so that's a really central part of what they need to do moving forward. And, you know, he talked about the fact that they were going to present the mayor with some options in mid-October.
That's a week away.
Yeah, right.
As
absolutely.
we're sitting here looking at, you know, we've been watching the lakefront, and you can see the water is crashing more than it has been. I mean, you can see that it is picking up over the last hour or two that we've been watching this.
Absolutely. And, you know, the system is in such, it feels like it's such a precarious situation. And, you know, I think that there's a reason that we've seen all these contractors come in. There's a reason that we're seeing the National Guard presence at those pump stations. Those National Guardsmen are helping with communication, they keep saying. And that's what we've heard from Mr. Rainwater. That's what we've heard from Mayor Landrieu, that their function at these pump stations is communication. So, you know, that's a real problem if you need the National Guard to come in and help make sure that you're getting word from pump station to central control, you know, about which pumps need to go on, how much power they have, what they can power, what they can turn on and what they can't turn on.
Right, because we're talking about a hurricane situation right now, but I mean, people in this city are afraid of a rainstorm.
Absolutely, and they have a reason to be. You know, that's a realized fear as of 3 days ago. So, you know, it's definitely a precarious situation right now, and I think that they're taking some real steps. You got to give credit where credit's due. They're taking some real steps to make sure that, you know, things don't get out of control.
Yeah, and our investigative team is staying on it with Down the Drain. They have a Facebook page dedicated to what they're working on.